This is a pan tilt zoom. It has a 5x optical zoom mini dome camera, a power over Ethernet IP camera. So I was sent this to review for free. If you wanted to purchase it, MSRP is about $250. I've seen it as cheap as $212 online. They haven't paid me for my review, and my opinion remains my own. Alright, so in the box we have the camera itself, and the camera has here an Ethernet connector along with the cable gland for sealing up an Ethernet cable that might be plugged into that. There looks like there's an indicator LED here. It also has a 12-volt barrel connector socket in here, and it does say that the tip there is positive. So this is the camera. So there's elements of metal here. This outer thing and this arm outside are metal. This bit in here is plastic. Some of this is aluminum, some of this is plastic. And so it does have two tiny little Phillips screws here, and there's a compartment with an SD card icon on it, so I'm assuming you unscrew that, you can put an SD card in this for local storage. It has a large number of lights around it. It looks like some of these are visible, some of these are infrared lights going around here, and then it has the actual camera lens itself there. So it has a sticker that comes with it, and then it has the manual and software. You have to go to the website with the QR code. Alright, on their website I found the 501 IP pan tilt zoom camera pretty easily. So the first thing they have listed is the default login, which is admin 123456. Under software they just have a link to an executable, so you have to have Windows operating system to run their software. And then they have a manual download, which is a PDF file. So I'm hoping that I can connect this thing to my network and do all the configuration via a web-based control panel without using their software, and that way, you know, it'll work with Mac or Linux as well as Windows. All right, so the online manual is a single page which is designed to be folded up, and they have several different types of cameras here. They have generic diagrams of how to connect it up, how to modify the camera's IP address if you're not using DHCP. They talk about the device search tool, which I assume is their Windows software. There's the client software. It says working with Internet Explorer, so I'm hoping it will work with Chrome or Mozilla Firefox since I'm not on a Windows computer here. And they have some functions and commands, frequently asked questions, but nothing super specific or in-depth. So I hope it's going to just work. Alright, small Phillips screwdriver removes these two machine screws. This is kind of an cast aluminum back plate, and there's an aluminum back body here. You pull that off, there's a blue seal going around here, and right inside is just the electronics of the camera, and right there is the slot for inserting a micro SD card. Right, so the contacts on this card face that circuit board kind of towards the camera lens. Once you get it this far in, you just push it down and it snaps and locks in place. I don't know what the requirements are for that. I'm using a U3 class 10 card, which is, you know, a pretty functional card, so it should have no problem with that card. So for testing purposes, I'm going to be powering and communicating to this guy with a D-Link DGS1008P power over Ethernet gigabit switch. So this is an older piece of equipment, but it should support this guy with no problem since it's the only thing coming out of it. Alright, I have this guy plugged into power over Ethernet. The camera is spinning around, looks like it's doing a boot up sequence. We have this green light. It flashed a little bit, it was lighting up, now it's solid with a couple of little flashes. I'm running to about 100 feet of Cat6 Ethernet cable here, so it doesn't look like, you know, a decent length run has any problems. We just had a light turn on and the camera's spinning around, so I think it's in the process of booting up and connecting to the network. Supposedly, this guy will request an address via DHCP. If it doesn't get that, it has a fixed address that it will default to, but I'm hoping it'll find it with DHCP. Alright, the blinking lights on the router say both links are active. My uplink's a gigabit. It looks like this particular camera is either 10 or 100 megabits per second, which should be enough for a 4K video stream. Alright, so the camera got a DHCP address on the wired port of my router, so I'm just going to point my web browser at that address and see what happens. Right, so when I first popped up, the page had a lot of Chinese on it. Then it changed to this, and my browser's asking me if I want to translate. I'm going to hit cancel. There's a language drop down here, and you can pick lots of different languages, but it looks like it defaults to English. And then here's where we would put in that default username and password. So just admin 123456. All right, I'm happy to report this guy's working just fine from Mozilla Firefox. So far, I have a live stream of my ceiling. All right, so in the web configuration, you can adjust image quality, you can adjust the size of the video you're recording, the frame rate. If you want to do 4K here, your frame rate is limited to 25, but if you go down to 2560 by 1440, at that point you can move the frame rate up to 30. I don't know if it'll ever support anything faster than 30 frames per second. It looks like 30 frames per second is your max, and it looks like 25 frames per second is your max at the 4K. You have control over whether or not you want to encode audio or not, snapshots. You can set up the network either with a static IP or DHCP. And then it has the web enabled, ONVIF enabled, that also does various control protocols, RTSP, HIK, so it can send an email on an alarm, upload FTP servers. There's an alarm service center you can access, and then connection check. You can put in an IP address or a host name and test it. You have some information about, does it detect motion and so forth, a couple of other intelligent detections. For the storage, it has, the memory card is plugged in, and so it can record to that, and you can either record all the time or you can schedule record at certain times. Right now I can unmount or format the SD card that I installed. It's currently used 56 megabytes worth of recording on that SD card. It was at 30 the last time I checked, so it's basically continuously recording with these settings. There's general, you can set up different accounts to use the camera, the language. You can sync the date and time to the PC, for example, so it basically sets the time. There is a factory reset, there's a reboot the camera button, there's something called auto maintain, which I'm assuming will look for firmware updates and automatically apply them. It's not turned on by default. They have an upgrade where you can select a file for a firmware upgrade and just upload it to the camera. The website didn't list any software for upgrades. And then they just have an information screen that tells you some information. Now there is a link to download a web plugin. I'm using Mozilla Firefox. I don't think that web program would be supported. I suspect that's only for Internet Explorer. But it looks like you can certainly configure this guy, drive the pan tilt around, do the zoom control, that type of thing, with the web control, and then configure it for anything ONVIF that you'd want to use with this. So this is the 5x optical zoom all the way out, and then when you turn it on to zoom in, I have the speed set to 10, so it's not the fastest zoom here, but it is auto-focusing automatically after the zoom or any movement, and so I can move the head of the camera around. And this is the fastest speed it'll go. That's speed 10, but it's certainly reasonably fast for what you're doing, but it's not like a speed demon. Alright, I put the camera outside in a testing location, and as you can see, I am able to see outside. So this is the full field of view, and I'm going to use their optical zoom here. Now focus doesn't work while you're zooming. I don't believe it actually focuses until you're fully zoomed in. So that is the fully zoomed position. I'm not sure if that's a 5x optical zoom there. That looked more like a 2x, maybe a 3x optical zoom. It's definitely doing an optical zoom, but my field of view doesn't seem to be getting 5 times smaller. So you can set in preset locations with numbers, and you can say, hey, go to my preset location number 2, and it will pan across, and go to wherever number 2 was set to. And then you can go and say, okay, go back to number 1, and it will automatically go back to number 1. So if you have a couple of areas you typically look at, you can preset them in. It looks like they have to be numbered, not named. Now the preset locations do not include the zoom level, so I've zoomed out, and when I go back to my number 1 preset location, it stays at the zoomed out level, but it's pointing in that direction. Alright, so on the playback screen down here there's a little red area that says, hey, we detected motion here. I happen to be walking by about 1:40 p.m. And there I am walking through. So you can see it's tracking the motion. There's a little red box drawn around me. In the area down here, there's the red area that says, hey, a little before the motion, a little after the motion. Here I am walking back. You can see it's detected the motion. Alright, so this guy mostly functions well. I haven't been super impressed with any of the features. It's just kind of a basic camera. At night, it turns on the visible lights. I think it gets a better view with the infrared lights than the visible lights, so I think I'm going to turn off the feature where it turns on the visible lights when it sees motion. But you know, it basically, you can move it around, you can zoom in. I don't think it's really a 5x zoom. My guess would be 2 or 3x zoom. And you know, you can configure it to be usable with a lot of other systems. It has a lot of features to connect up with other things. So that's this camera.